Hello and welcome to another episode of Isn't That Something? I'm Ralph Crewe and today we set sail to explore the C, the letter. See what I did there? According to Wikipedia, the letter C is the third letter of the English and ISO Basic Latin alphabets. Before we dive in, a disclaimer. I am not a linguist. No! Nor am I an expert in orthography. I'm simply a curious Clyde, connecting cool characteristics and coincidences concerning this lovely letter for your continuing consideration. The Latin letter C is derived from the Greek letter gamma. I know what you're thinking. Isn't G the Latin offspring of gamma? Indeed, it is, but C is too. Think of them kind of like twins, but not the kind that always dresses the same. You know what I mean. C and G are totally their own independent glyphs and whatnot. A crate game you gan play at home is trying to speak normally, but swidge your C's and G's. How long gan you keep going? Anyway, back to gamma. Gamma is from the Semitic letter gimel, early representations of which are said to resemble a camel, maybe. The Cyrillic character S looks just like C, but actually derives from the Greek sigma, not gamma. When two characters, graphemes, or glyphs look identical but function differently, they are said to be homoglyphs. In the case of S and C, the homoglyphic pair comes from two totally separate alphabets, but that isn't always the case. For instance, the homoglyphs lowercase l and uppercase I, or 0 and O, or a diaeresis and an umlaut. Side note, in researching this video, I found out that the single dot above an I or a J is called a tittle. Isn't that something? In English, there are two typical pronunciations of the letter C, a hard C and a soft C. For example, the C in sea ice is a soft C, even though sea ice is a hard C when you think about it. The C in Cleveland, on the other hand, is a hard C. Just remember, it's hard to see the Browns beat the Steelers. Sometimes C makes other sounds beyond the typical hard and soft Cs. C might pair up with H to form the digraph ch. This is the sound heard in cheese pizza or chafing dish, or I must ask you a question. Sometimes CH pretends to be a hard C, but that's pretty out of character. Sometimes C gets ch-e without the H too. A delicious example that you might appreciate can be found in the synonym for the C, the ocean. Oh. Occasionally, C doesn't make a sound at all. I don't mean this as an indictment or anything. C is seen in a cornucopia of categories and corners of life. You can find C in music and also in computer science. For more on both of those topics, let's turn it over to my good friend Pablo from the up-and-coming music/computer science YouTube channel, Musicode.
Hi, I'm a computer scientist, and I'm a musician. Did you know that one of the most commonly used programming languages is called C? Well, did you know that one of the most commonly used notes in music is also called C? Okay, but we also have another language called C++. What's that? It's kind of like an augmented version of C. What? We also have an augmented version of C. It's the C augmented chord. Whoa. We also have something called C#, which is a semitone above C. This is getting spooky. We also have another programming language called C#. To be fair, C is really only used in English. Did you know that it's called do in Spanish and French? C. One cool thing about C is that it's what's called a Turing-complete language.
Yes.
This means that we can convert a program written in any other Turing-complete language into C or C++ or C#. Cool. Well, we have something called the C clef, which allows us to use the same 5 lines of a staff for different instruments with different pitch ranges. You know, all the code I've written for the visualizations in the Musicode videos have been written in C++. Can you write some code, in C obviously, where we can move the C clef and hear it sound differently? Won't that sound weird though? C. Okay, let's see. Oh, I'll store everything you play in a variable called C. Very meta. How much time do we have left? Oh, speaking of time, this is where the letter C makes yet another appearance. When used in a staff, it stands for common time, which is 4/4. Pretty much all of pop music is in 4/4. Have you saved your files yet? Oh, saving files reminds me. On Windows computers, which were one of the first personal computers, the main drive where you stored everything was called the C drive. Cool? Are you done? C. Let's play.
Thanks, Pablo. If you haven't already, check out his excellent channel here. I'll also leave a link in the description. Now let's see, where were we? In chemistry, the letter C is the chemical symbol for the element carbon. Carbon is from the Latin carbo, meaning coal. Carbon is chemically unique in that it is tetravalent, meaning it can form 4 covalent bonds, including bonds with other carbons. This means there are countless ways to combine carbon and other elements. Carbon is the backbone for all life on Earth, forming uncountable thousands of molecules, including carbohydrates, nucleic acids, proteins, fats, and a vast variety of other biologically significant compounds. Because of this, the study of carbon chemistry gets its very own college course, the source of countless tears and switching to business school, organic chemistry. Carbon also forms everybody's favorite planet cooker, carbon dioxide. This oxidized form of carbon is released by the metabolism of most living things, and more importantly, is released during the combustion of carbon-containing compounds. When you see the phrase climate change, a fun game is to imagine the C's in the words to represent carbon or catastrophe. Carbon also plays an essential role in countless other ways, from diamonds to pencil lead, high-strength composite materials, and beyond. Another place we see, or at least saw C's, was as a standard size of consumer batteries. C batteries used to be more common and were used to power flashlights, toys, boom boxes, and other wonders of the late 20th century. Today, they are found most commonly as projectiles at Philadelphia sporting events. C batteries aren't the only place that we find electric C's.
Standard Unit Challenge!
Do you know what the SI standard unit of electric charge is? Not volts, they are a derived unit for electrical potential. Not amps or amperes, they are the base unit of electrical current, describing the flow of a given number of charges per unit time. Not watts, they're a measure of power, which aren't even used exclusively in terms of electricity, but when they are, they represent a flow of 1 amp of current across a voltage potential of 1 volt. Named for everybody's favorite 18th century French military engineer, Charles Augustin de Coulomb, the base unit of electric charge is the coulomb, represented by a capital C. A coulomb is the amount of electrical charge that flows when a current of 1 amp is measured for a second. But what is a second really? In terms of elementary charges, like the electric charge of a proton or an electron, a coulomb is 6,241,509,574,460,762,607.776 charges. That's a lot of charges. Interestingly, because of that 776 after the decimal point, it is impossible to have precisely 1 coulomb of charge because you can't have a fraction of an electron. While we're here in physics land, let's go ahead and see what other C's we can find. If we look at Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared, the C stands for the speed of light. No one knows what the other letters mean. Such a profound science mystery. This C may stand for constant, which would make sense since Einstein's relativity depends on the speed of light being constant. It may also come from the Latin celeritas, meaning swiftness or celerity. Who doesn't love celerity? It goes so well with hot wings. Speaking of hot, most of the world measures temperature in the Celsius scale, which is represented by, you guessed it, C. The system is named after Anders Celsius, a Swedish astronomer who developed a centigrade scale with 100 degrees separating the freezing and boiling points of water. Strangely, his actual thermometer had 0 as the boiling point and 100 as the freezing point. Despite having the scale upside down from what we typically use, his skill in instrumentation and determining the effect of atmospheric pressure on the boiling point led to a world of much finer thermometry. Folks tended to flip the scale to what we consider normal today, marking 0 as the freezing point and 100 as the boiling point. This system was just called centigrade until it was renamed in honor of Celsius in 1948. If we back up to biology, we see C in the blueprint for life as one of the 4 nitrogenous bases of DNA. C stands for cytosine, and it always forms a rung of the ladder of DNA with its partner guanine, represented by G. Given the orthographical similarities of the letters C and G, I think it's pretty neat that the 2 DNA bases C and G pair exclusively with one another. Confoundingly, there is also an amino acid represented by the letter C. This amino acid, one of 20 building blocks of protein, is called cysteine and is one of only 2 sulfur-containing amino acids. Sometimes the sulfur in one cysteine will form a bond with another sulfur in a nearby cysteine. And to add to the confusion, the resulting disulfide is called cysteine. You know, if it weren't for the bewildering nomenclature of biochemistry, maybe I wouldn't have gotten a C in the class.
No!
Oh yeah, vitamin C, also a thing. Vitamins, whole bag of worms. I don't want to go too deep into it, but make sure you get enough vitamin C in your diet, lest you come down with a case of scurvy. Interestingly, most animals make their own vitamin C, but humans don't, so we must get it from our food. In fact, all the members of the primate suborder Haplorini, or the dry-nosed primates, cannot produce vitamin C. This is not the case for the Strepsirini, or wet-nosed primates. If you've ever wondered why you never see wet-nosed primates with scurvy, well, now you know. The last biological C I want to mention is the group of vertebrae that make up your neck, known as cervical vertebrae. There are 7 of these neck buddies, and we call them C1, C2, C3, and so on. C1 and C2 are also known as the atlas and axis, and specialize in holding up your head. C1 is named Atlas specifically after the Greek god who holds up the globe.
Hey, can I get a little help here?
Switching gears, we see C in math as well. A regular old C is usually used as a constant, sometimes representing a generic coefficient in a polynomial, sometimes at the end of an integral calculus solution as the constant of integration, sometimes as a label for geometric points, faces, angles, and whatnot. If you see this fancy pants C, then you've wandered into the magical world of set theory. Set theory is great fun. Try it out for yourself sometime if you're bored. The fancy C represents the set of all complex numbers. That is, all numbers of the form A plus BI, where A and B are real coefficients, and I is the imaginary unit, the square root of -1. C is a special letter in sports too, eh? In hockey, one player on the team will wear a C on their jersey. That player is the captain of the team. The captain gets to complain to the ref and is the spiritual leader of the team. Really, it seems more of a ceremonial status thing than anything, but if you're a hockey fan, you know who wears the C on your favorite team. There's also a C in baseball. If you see a C next to a batter's name on a broadcast, that player is the catcher. In football, basketball, hockey, and many other team sports, there's typically a player labeled as the center, and that also is abbreviated usually with C. If you're into woodworking, you probably recognize this squeezy tool as a C clamp. If you're into word working, you know that the shortcut to copy text is Control-C. If you like sending emails to large groups of people, you know that CC sends a copy of the email to people beyond the primary recipients in the to line. If you don't mind, stop that. By the way, CC stands for carbon copy because you used to be able to make copies of handwritten or typed letters by using carbon paper. Oh hey, carbon's back again. If you want to prevent people from distributing your intellectual property for a creative work, then you should use a copyright. If you do, you can signal this ownership using the copyright symbol, which is a circle with a C in it. In the NATO phonetic alphabet, C is Charlie. In Morse code, it is beep, 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 beep. In American Sign Language, it is. In Braille, it is 2 raised points at the top of a 6-dot Braille cell. In Semaphore, C is this. C stands for so much in the world. I've only scratched the surface of the deep sea of C stuff. I can tell you one important fact though. C is for cookie, and that's good enough for me. Isn't That Something was written, recorded, and edited by me, Ralph Crewe. Original music by Kyle Simpson. Veuve by John Caughman. Semaphore C by Jocie Farrell. Huge thanks to Pablo Castro, go check out his sweet new channel, Musicode. If you liked this show, please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. If you really like the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Click the link in the description for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Something, 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 something.